Now, faced with a shortage of protective face masks, the South Korean government has announced a set of measures to increase the supply. Prime Minister Chung Se-gyun announced the measures at an extraordinary cabinet meeting this morning. The measures include limiting the number of face masks each person can buy, banning mask exports, and increasing the proportion of distribution done through the state from the current 50% to 80%. The government also plans to subsidize manufacturers to maximize daily production, which currently stands at around 13 million masks a day. The International Monetary Fund is warning that the faster spread of COVID-19 erases any chance of more robust global growth in 2020. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Speaking at a news conference Wednesday, IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva said the COVID-19 outbreak will wipe out any hope of stronger economic growth in 2020.
We also know that we have a sound financial system, much more resilient than it was before the global financial crisis. However, what we are wrestling with is uncertainty. And that defines our projections, which at this point lead us to state that global growth in 2020 will dip below its last year's levels.
She said the IMF now expects 2020 global growth to be below the 2.9% rate recorded in 2019, and this would represent more than a 0.4 percentage drop from the previous forecast of 3.3% made in January. She added the latest revision comes as the virus spreads rapidly outside China. According to estimates published by the UN Conference on Trade and Development on Wednesday, a slowdown in manufacturing in China is disrupting world trade and could result in a $50 billion decrease in exports across global value chains. According to its estimates, the European Union looks to be most affected by the decline and will lose out on over $15.6 billion in trade. Estimates also show South Korea will be among the most affected, predicting a loss of over $3.8 billion. The sectors hit hardest include precision instruments, machinery, automotive, and communication equipment. However, the report adds the estimated global effects of the COVID-19 outbreak are subject to change, depending on containment efforts or changes to supply chains. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea sent 3 rapid response teams to Vietnam this morning to help South Korean nationals stuck in isolation there. A total of 270 South Koreans have been isolated in public facilities in Vietnam as the country's restricted entry from South Korea to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The 3 teams, each made up of 4 members, have been sent to Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and Da Nang, and will stay there for about a week. They'll be consulting with local authorities to get the South Koreans out of isolation, help them return home, and provide other support. Coronavirus cases outside of China continue to increase at a rapid pace. The number of people infected in Iran is nearing 3,000, and Italy has decided to close schools and universities as its death toll from the virus surpasses 100. Park Se-young has more.
The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Iran is near 3,000 as of Wednesday. Iran's health ministry announced that 2,922 people have been infected with the virus and 92 people have died. Tehran, which has one of the highest death tolls outside China, has been reporting more than 10 deaths per day since the start of March.
Unfortunately, from yesterday till now, 15 people have died from the coronavirus, so the total death toll from COVID-19 has reached 92 people.
The Iranian president said Wednesday that the coronavirus has encompassed almost all of Iran's provinces, and the country has announced plans to mobilize 300,000 soldiers and volunteers to confront the virus. Over in Europe, Italy is also struggling to halt the spread of the virus that has killed 107 and infected more than 3,000 there. Roughly 3% of the confirmed number of cases have ended in death in Italy, which is the oldest population in Europe. The government has ordered all schools and universities to close as a measure to contain the virus.
We felt it was the right thing to do to suspend educational activity until the 15th of this month.
The Prime Minister added that professional football matches and other major sporting events will take place without fans until April 3rd to help prevent, quote, further opportunities of infection. With the virus reaching 81 countries and territories around the world, Germany's health minister said Wednesday that the outbreak has become a global pandemic and that we have yet to reach the peak of the outbreak. In the U.S., California declared a state of emergency over the coronavirus after announcing its first death and more than 50 cases in the state. The World Health Organization has so far stopped short of declaring a pandemic, but asked countries around the world to prepare for the possibility. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
If you're just tuning in, we're waiting for a briefing to start from the South Korean health authorities about the coronavirus outbreak. We'll break into that as soon as we can. In the meantime, South Korea's Food and Drug Safety Ministry will be unveiling a set of comprehensive measures this week on the nation's supply of face masks. Speaking to lawmakers at the Legislation and Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, Minister Lee Eui-kyung said the government is working on a system that would boost manpower at 140 local face mask manufacturers and connect them with the Trade Ministry should they run out of raw materials. The additional measure comes as domestic demand for face masks shot up exponentially, with long lines forming at pharmacies and government-designated sellers as the number of confirmed COVID-19 patients spiked. Public anger has been threatening to bubble over as the supply of face masks is nowhere near demand. The Seoul Metropolitan Government is giving out 200,000 protective face masks to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the capital. The city government already donated 40,000 masks late last month with the help of local mask producer Filt Corporation, but it plans to distribute 160,000 more in March to elderly people who live alone, to low-income households, and to social service centers. Despite the rapid increase in the number of cases in the country, South Korea's efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19 are being praised by many global media outlets. They're impressed by the country's drive-through screening facilities and the tracking apparatus that pins down the travel movements of infected patients. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The South Korean government's technologically advanced, transparent, and well-funded plans to combat the COVID-19 outbreak have grabbed the attention of the world's media. Many international outlets say Seoul's efforts are miles ahead of the measures put forth by China and Japan, where the entire city of Wuhan was put on lockdown and an entire cruise ship was completely isolated for quarantine, respectively. In an article this week, AFP praised South Korea's advanced health system and free media, describing them as factors that improve the reliability of the statistics provided by the government. The country's drive-through screening facilities that enable safer and faster testing were also reported on by many international media outlets. Quoting experts, CNN reported that such an innovative way of testing limits the exposure of frontline workers, as the tests are done in minutes, while passengers never have to get out of the car. The Wall Street Journal praised how the South Korean government effectively tracks those who have been infected. Explaining that the government uses mobile phone data, credit card records, and surveillance camera footage to pin down their movements, it added it's definitely one of the most ambitious tracking systems in Asia. U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Harry Harris also said on Wednesday that he was impressed by Seoul's efforts.
We're very impressed with all that Korea is doing, and comprehensive measures to test and to take steps to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
He added that South Korea is taking the lead in the global fight against the outbreak. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the briefing that we're waiting for was due to start at around 2:10 p.m. here, Korea time. But as we wait, we'll continue with some more updates. We see that South Korea's current account surplus dropped sharply in January, but mostly on slowing exports rather than the outbreak. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the surplus was just over $1 billion in January, down almost $2.3 billion on year. The goods account surplus was $1.93 billion, down $3.8 billion from the same period last year. Exports on a customs clearance basis marked roughly $43 billion in January, down over 12% on year. The central bank largely attributes the drop to fewer working days because of the Lunar New Year holiday and falling prices of South Korea's major export items like semiconductors. Former New York City mayor and billionaire Mike Bloomberg pulled out of the Democratic Party's presidential race on Wednesday after suffering a string of defeats on Super Tuesday. The 76-year-old only joined the race 101 days ago, but spent a staggering $600 million of his own money on his campaign. After dropping out, Bloomberg's now backing former Vice President Joe Biden to become the party's nominee and go up against President Trump in November's election. Bloomberg becomes the third Democratic candidate to withdraw and back Biden this week. After Super Tuesday, Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders are the only two Democratic candidates remaining with a realistic chance of taking on President Trump in November. And as we wait for the briefing to begin, which was scheduled at 2:10 p.m. Korea time, we'll take a look at some preventative measures to keep everyone healthy as the outbreak continues here in South Korea. Let's take a look.
The novel coronaviruses are spreading all over the world. To prevent the virus from spreading further, it's essential to attend to personal hygiene.
We will now begin the briefing on the coronavirus outbreak. As of midnight today, the total number of COVID-19 confirmed cases stands at 5,766. Compared to yesterday, it was up by 438. Out of them, 88 have been discharged following full recovery. And as of the number of deaths, it has increased, and officially it's confirmed that we have 37 fatalities. And this number is expected to be released in the upcoming hours. And let us now look at the outbreak overall in the country. Over 60% is related to cluster or community transmission. And there's also sporadic outbreaks that are carrying out, about 30% of them. And this will be investigated going forward. And we believe that the cluster or community transmission will be increased. And more specifically, ranging for Sincheonji case, currently it takes up to overall about 60% of the entire cases nationwide. And as for the Daegu city, and related to the Sincheonji Church in Daegu, it's accounting for the largest number of outbreaks with 69%. And among the contacts of the Sincheonji members, the outbreak is continuing on with around the community centers as well as hospitals. And in Gyeongsang-Pukdo province, we spot that 36 new confirmed cases were spotted at a sanatorium, and we are concerned about increase of the community transfer in this region. And more specifically, it has been released this earlier today, but centering around the Gyeongsang city, which has been designated as the new special zone, we see an increase in the outbreak. And to this end, we urge and we suggest the people to have a social distancing and precautionary sanitation measures. We advise you to stay at home and avoid going to crowded places. And especially for those of you going indoors and which are crowded, including the religious services, it should be refrained from right now. Moreover, many institutions and companies, we urge them to exert the measures of working from home. And especially for the public, when you are staying at home, we urge you to take a sufficient amount of rest, some exercise, as well as ventilation on a regular basis. And this is something that we recommend as well as the experts. And if you have any symptoms of fever or respiratory symptoms, we do suggest that you refrain from going outdoors and take some rest at home for the next 3 to 4 days. If the symptoms continue, before you visit the hospitals or any medical services, please call the call center at 1339 and visit the screening centers at your vicinity. And when visiting these screening centers, please do wear face masks. And if possible, drive with your own car when you visit to these places. And moreover, centering around our control headquarters, we have divided we have designated the public relief hospitals, so you could be informed of these lists by a 1339 call center, so please do take use of them. Thank you.
And that was Kwon Jun-uk, who's the vice head of the Central Disease Control Headquarters. That'll conclude our live coverage of this briefing. In our upcoming newscasts, though, we will have updates on all of this information along with in-depth analysis. Arirang News, of course, is the place to find out the latest on the coronavirus outbreak in South Korea. That's it from the News Center for now, but we'll be back in less than an hour at 3 p.m. Bye for now.